Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Matta-Aliah to the show. May is Lebanese by birth, New Yorker by heart, and a true wine nerd. In this episode, our three key takeaways and what we're excited to learn from May are first, bridging tradition and relevance, because Italian wine has such a rich heritage, but it needs to stay relevant in today's very fast-moving US market. Second, adapting to a changing consumer landscape. And then third, really the strategy behind the ambassador role. So it's not just a storyteller, right? It's kind of a cultural translator, a trade partner, a market strategist. So we'll hear about the ways that she kind of develops that for her brands.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in. Welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Barbara Fitzgerald. In this show, we'll break down the complexities of selling wine in the US by discussing the relevant issues of today with experts from around the globe. Each episode serves up three key insights to help elevate your winery's presence in the US market. So grab a pen and paper and let's pave the way for your success in the US. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome May Matta-Aliah to the show. May is Lebanese by birth, New Yorker by heart, and a true wine nerd. With 2 decades of wine education under her belt, May is happiest when swirling, sipping, and sharing her love of all things wine. She's racked up an impressive list of wine certifications and has represented numerous wine regions and wineries as an educational or brand ambassador through her company In the Grape. She's also a fellow Italian wine ambassador, so it always feels extra special to have someone in that family on the show. So welcome, May. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Barbara. Good to be on the show. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into today's discussion, May, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you came to work in the wine business?
Well, my background as a Lebanese born, every end of the summer vacation, my family would go up to the Bekaa Valley and we would buy wine and they would get their, case of red, case of rosé, case of white. So ever since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by wine. And, fast forward many years later, I studied graphic design, worked as a graphic designer, and then in my job was assigned some wine importers as clients and went off to some wine classes to learn about my clients and decided pretty promptly that I'd much rather stop being a designer and become a wine educator. So that's kind of the shortcut to the journey. But yeah, that went from an interest and a passion, a word that everybody in the wine industry seems to use, to me deciding to actually pursue it as a career and then going through my WSET certifications. Started with just taking a class because I thought it was fun, and then went to level 3, did my diploma, and here I was with my diploma and looking for something to do with that diploma, and somewhat accidentally stumbled upon education. Very happily stumbled upon education.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So can you share some of the brands and regions that you're currently working with?
Yes. So I've been working with one of our fabulous Italian wine regions, which is Franciacorta. They are a current client of mine that I started working with in 2016. And I am currently also working with a winery from Lebanon called Chateau Xara, which is the oldest and the largest winery from Lebanon. And those are my kind of ongoing clients today. Prior to that, I also represented Alto Adige for many years. I've worked with Champagne. I've worked with Port. I do a lot of work with Chablis and the wines of Bourgogne. And from Lebanon, this is the third winery that I've represented. So I like to shepherd Lebanese wineries into the market and then help get them some traction. So I've worked with 2 previous wineries, and now I'm working with the biggest one. So I think I might have reached the max there.
Well, that's so great to hear about all of this experience that you have, as you said, kind of shepherding definitely international brands, but especially for this show, we focus on Italian brands, wineries, and regions into the US market. So that's what we're going to talk to May about today. So in this episode, our 3 key takeaways and what we're excited to learn from May are first, bridging tradition and relevance, because Italian wine has such a rich heritage, but it needs to stay relevant in today's very fast-moving US market. So we'll talk to her about some ways that she does that. Second, adapting to a changing consumer landscape. So as we know, we hear it time and again, sober curious trends, growing competition with alternative beverages. So how she's keeping Italian wine relevant amidst those changes. And then third, really the strategy behind the ambassador role. So it's not just a storyteller, right? It's kind of a cultural translator, a trade partner, a market strategist. So we'll hear about the ways that she kind of develops that for her brands.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in. We're going to kind of, like I said, start exploring how heritage, quote unquote, can be reimagined for today's US consumer. Because we can't just sell wine with tradition anymore. It's about kind of translating legacy into maybe more emotionally resonant stories that connect with today's consumer values. So, how do you make that tradition, from Italian wine feel fresh and relevant to an American audience?
It's an interesting question because I think that in wine communication in general, there has not been a whole lot of innovation. There are some brands that are innovating, but I think for the most part, we've pretty much stayed sort of with the tried and true. I think I'm not going to be able to answer your question directly, primarily because for the various regions that I work with, there are, and this is kind of a way of tacking into your last question, which is that when you're in an ambassador role, it's not a one size fits all. So, and oftentimes when you're working with a region, and I know that you've done your fair share with working with Italians, and so when you're working with consortios, the bigger picture is coming from them. So, as the ambassador, I wish I was in a role where I can actually direct the conversation, but I'm more on the end where I'm just presenting what they've already decided. So, this is kind of the role that I play with Franciacorta now. So, in that sense, what I'm doing is an extension of their strategy. So, within that, I'll give you a direct example of Franciacorta. The last few years in Italy, they've been the partner to Michelin. And this in 2024, they signed a 3-year contract with Michelin USA. So the message comes from the region in that everything that we do now in the US for the next 3 years will be focused on Michelin restaurants. So then it's really, it's up to us saying, okay, well, Michelin just did an event in the Southeast. What city are we going to go to? But when we're going there, it's pretty classical, seminar presentation, and really just targeting those regions where Michelin has already been. And it's kind of a follow up to what they're doing. So it's not very innovative in that sense, because that's more the direction that's coming from them. Prior to that, I'll say, for example, where I had a different role, because I was also in an ambassador role, but in a different capacity, I worked with Armagnac. Armagnac being an old brandy from France, that was actually the first ambassador role I ever had. And I started with them in 2009. So they were really my first baby, and how I kind of figured out my way in this ambassador role. What was interesting about them is that when they brought me on, they never had a PR arm in the US. They never had a PR person. So I was wearing many hats, and I was wearing everything from, going and having a drink at a bar and talking to bartenders and going in and training them and trying to get placements. And then, doing consumer events, doing industry training, going to Tales of the Cocktails, going to, spirits seminars and conferences, but then also doing events. And I did effectively everything you can think of doing for this one account. But then come the pandemic, as we know, the world kind of shut down. Coming back from that, I really wanted to reposition what I was doing for them and do something that was a lot more interactive. I felt that, community was where people wanted to be. We wanted something a little bit different. There was also a very new generation of people that came in. So I kind of shifted from just doing, let's all sit in a room and do a classic PowerPoint presentation to doing events. And so I kind of took the category and segmented it into different topics, and then did lounges. And the lounge would be, you come in and, one was like on a Sunday afternoon, and I had a foosball table, and we had music, and we had, snacks, and you were just kind of self-guided. And I was there. I had informational cards about the categories, and I was there to kind of interact with people. Then we did another event that was on another category. This was more sort of more premium categories, and I did it as a lunch and paired it with tacos. Tacos and Armagnac. And then we did another one that was for vintage Armagnac, and I brought on a caviar purveyor, and we did caviar bumps and Armagnac. So it was different because And we really opened it up. We had a lot of industry come, and I would just stand on a chair and kind of do this, big kind of
Yeah.
off presentation. And it drew a lot of people. And I really tried to get a very different group of people into the room. And they were really successful. And by
Yeah.
all metrics, I think, I had such positive feedback. But then what happens? The region comes and says, we've decided this was great, but for next year, we want to go back to doing seminars. So that's all you can do now. And then that's all you do.
Yeah.
So the reality is that you could be very creative. And at the end of the day, if the clients or the strategy, because, they're all coming from consortiums that have communication
Right.
committees, and they decide what they decide, and then it's up to you to implement.
But what you were saying about these events sounds like such great examples of ways to make messaging, storytelling really land with a US audience.
I really think so. And I will say, my last one was going to be, which I was very excited about, because I think that's, how do we bring them? So I would love to get, 40 people on a plane and take them all to Gascony, because there's nothing like experiencing that, like nothing like experiencing Italy, right? But
Right.
I couldn't. So there is a place in New York that's actually a farm owned and run by a lady who is from Gascony, and it feels very much like a Gascony farm. And I was going to do a day trip, just get everybody on a bus, have an Armagnac cocktails on the bus, take everybody up to the farm, spend the day on the farm, and really bring that experience of being in Gascony, but in upstate New York. And everybody was, very excited about it. We were going to have, a duck dish, and we were going to really try to make it feel like we were there. And then again, with the change of direction, they pulled the plug on it. But
Right.
to my mind, I think really kind of creating experiences that are engaging, where you can see yourself. It doesn't have to be fussy, it doesn't have to be precious. Education can take many different faces and many different directions, and it can be done in a conversation. It doesn't have to be, slideshow, death by PowerPoint, as we say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So what you're saying is though that tension between kind of bridging the tradition and the relevance is still very much there. So there's still work to be done and still ways, to find more innovative opportunities, maybe.
yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
And can we go back to a moment, as you were mentioning Franciacorta's work with Michelin? What
Mhm.
are those seminars like? Are they, talking about the terroir and, the unique attributes of Franciacorta? Is it more experiential? Is it both of those things?
So that's a great question. So what we do with Franciacorta is we've really, not every market is a mature market, right? So in some markets like New York, I'm based in New York. We have done several events already in New York. We had done, I think, 3 different festivals that were predating this contract with Michelin, but they were, we would offer different seminars, and some of them were panel discussions. And so they would take sort of the seminars in the morning. Then there was a big walk around tasting. That was a trade tasting. And then in the evening, it was a consumer event. And they were great. And we did a few of those. But so we've been in New York. We've done a lot of different seminars in New York. So this year, for example, we decided to just do a lunch. And we chose a restaurant. We did it at Armani. So
Mm.
our restaurant Armani is beautiful. They have a lot of Franciacorta on their list. It's very Italian, right? And
Yeah.
Franciacorta is so close to Milan, and it's all about fashion. And so it really felt right. The food was wonderful. We spoke to the chef. And so when our guests came, there was no PowerPoint. There was no, it was really just a lovely lunch. For that, what we did is we had a Magnum bar. So guests came in, they chit chat, they network, they're enjoying some wine. We had a little blind tasting competition with the person who did the best on it would get a trip. So there was an incentive to engage with the
Wow.
brand. And then we had a lunch, 3-course lunch, each course paired with 3 different wines. So really kind of showing the versatility, because a big part of our talking focus for Franciacorta is it's a wine for food. It's like we're sort of really walking away from just the pop open a bottle of wine and just celebrate and then move on. So it was really kind of highlighting how food friendly those wines are. And so it was a really nice experience. And 3 different courses, 3 different wines. They were able to taste 9 wines and pair them. And it was a really wonderful group of people, all professionals. So they were all, engaging with the wines in a way that you would normally would, right? At a table
Hmm.
with people with food.
Yeah.
So We did that for New York because we've been in New York a bunch of times. Miami, we've been to several times. And so Miami, the first time we went down there, we did more of a food and wine focused seminar. We went down again, did a discussion. We had winemakers, and I moderated discussion with different winemakers. We touched on different topics. We went there again, and for that third visit, we decided to just do what we called an industry appreciation party. And so we did it in November, and we did it at a beautiful rooftop. And we just had stations. So we had a station of the dosage zero. We had a satin station, a rosé station, food and wine pairing. But it really was just a party. And for that one, a mingling, and we kind of do a pause, and I'll always have a component of education, but again, it'll be more of a chat. So I get 10-15 minutes. I kind of lay the groundwork for what it is, and then go around and just talk to people and engage with them sort of on more one-to-one. And I think visiting, I think pinpointing key markets for your brands, and then building that loyalty incrementally, keep coming back and keep doing different new things in that market. Don't just come in and do the same seminar over and over and over, but find ways to engage with your loyal, clients in a way that feels a little bit more organic and more genuine. I think is a good thing to do. So, I mean, we've heard from a lot of suppliers in Miami now that the market has really shifted.
That's great.
And, so that's really great. So those are some of the conversations that I'm involved in with the person who handles the PR for them and with the consortio. Where is each market at and what is appropriate? If we're going into a new market, first time we're there, we do what I call my Franciacorta 101. So yes, then to answer your question, it's here's where it is, here's how it is, here's the soil, here's the climate, here are the grapes, here's how it's made, let's taste some wine. So it really depends. And this is part of what is very enjoyable working with the consortium directly, is that we work as a team.
Yeah.
There's Constance Chamberlain, who's Wine & Co. She does the PR. I do the education, but we're on Zooms with the consortium, and we're all hammering these things out together. And honestly, I think that's the most effective, when everybody's on the same page and says, okay, we did Chicago. We're in Chicago again. What makes sense for a follow-up seminar?
Yeah. And what it sounds like is you are really their kind of person on the ground. You're this in-market perspective that they wouldn't have otherwise, right? And you can't develop programming for a market if you don't know the market well. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a guessing game.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I find is that the best programs are when either the client comes and spends time in this market and really understands this market, or puts their faith in you that you really understand your market. I think the worst case scenario, and I say this having done, pretty much been doing this for a while, and I've seen a lot of different things. When everybody thinks that there's a one size fits all, I truly, truly do not believe there's a one size fits all scenario. And even in the US, you live in California, I live in New York. They're different.
We're very different.
New Jersey's a different market. New York, it's not the US market.
Yeah.
It's the US market, right?
Yeah.
And so you really have to tailor. You really have to and this is where you have to believe in the people that you're working with. And, I value, my career, what I studied in college before I became a wine educator was graphic design. And graphic design is all about visual communication. I see this as just a different way of communication. But I always think you have to communicate for your client. It's not, it's not about me. When I'm in a room and I have a lot of, students that I mentor, and I say, it's not about me. When I'm in that room, it is not about me. I'm not in here to tell you about I call it my fabulous life. It's not, that's not what we're in this room for. I'm here to service you and my client and try to bring that client, because every region is unique. Every region has a story to tell. Right. And so how do you bring that? And how do you connect the people in that room to that?
Yeah.
And genuine appreciation is really important. I will not work with a client if I don't believe in them. That's the privilege that I have also, but I really can't, and at the end of the day, I work for myself. And if I can't genuinely and enthusiastically speak about something, it will come across. I've had many people tell me I could never be a poker player because I just don't have that face. So if I'm excited about something, it comes from the heart. But I also, I want to be a partner, and I want to work with people that believe that I value them and I want their best interest.
That's great. But I mean, what I'm hearing is, the kind of like the line of the day in marketing is just meet the customer where they are. But you're somebody that can actually bridge that gap for the customer and the producer or the region, whoever they are. And that's so beautiful that you do it with such passion. I know we said passion gets thrown around a lot, but
I know, but it's yeah, it is. It's true. But I think it's true. You're saying that though, because every podcast I listen to, it's meet the clients where they're at, and I think
yeah, easier said than done.
it is easier said than done, right? But I've been really kind of fascinated by that concept, and I think it's
Yeah,
there are lots of opportunities, and
yeah.
yeah, I mean, anyway.
So let me ask a couple of questions a little bit more about kind of that changing consumer landscape. For example, we're talking about we see lower overall wine consumption, definitely among younger drinkers. And specifically with those younger drinkers, there really is a rising demand for experiences. So is that playing out in, I know you're offering, like, especially with Franciacorta, such a premium level of experience. Maybe it's a younger consumer might be price sensitive to that, but are you seeing that in any offerings that you have that it's really engaging younger consumers?
I think again with Franciacorta, it's a little hard for me to say that just because I don't have as much give in what we're doing. And that customer is a customer that is interested in things that are a little bit more premium, interested in fashion, interested in a particular lifestyle. And I think they're still buying. It's like I would say that the Franciacorta customer is maybe a little bit more mature customer, and they're still buying those wines and they're still seeking those experiences. When it comes to something like the Lebanese wine that I work with, for example, that's where I'm working with a brand, which is a little bit easier because you just have one person to convince instead of a consortium of people to convince. But with that, for example, I'm trying to do a lot of things where I'm in events, I'm in places where young Lebanese people are to get them to drink those wines. And so, I've connected with a lot of people that are doing, festivals and things here. And then I'll be there and I'm pouring the wines there and I'm
Great.
getting those wines in front of people. I'm taking a drink that is the very traditional, which is called arak, and it's our, very traditional Lebanese spirit. And I'm going to make a punch with it, and I'm going to put it on ice, to kind of like get people to try to see it in a different light. But I think, to go back to, meet them where they're at, we can, I mean, doing in-store tastings works, right? Doing all of these things works. You sell bottles, people taste, they buy the bottles, but we need to do more. And I think just kind of finding the partnerships with people that are out there that are doing fun things, where I'm
Yeah.
like doing pop-up dinners, where I'm going and doing these festivals. That's what I'm doing with that brand, because that's where I can get to the younger people.
You kind of said it a little bit earlier, that it can be tempting to put on one event, see that it worked well, and then that's what you want, you want to make that the format going forward, but you have to offer something fresh every time to keep people engaged and excited and to really build that loyalty within a market.
I think you have to keep innovating a little bit, and I've been very interested, and I don't have an answer for that yet, Barbara, but I'll tell you. But I really have been trying to see what events people are doing that are a little bit different, that are a little bit more kind of exciting, and are they working? Because I have also been to events where people have tried to do something different. And the wine industry is a funny beast because we have to really differentiate between industry people and consumers. For the vast majority of wine industry people that I know in the city, they want things to be pretty straight up. They want a tasting, they want a seminar, they want to sit down and take their notes and taste their wines, and that's it. Events that I've gone to that have been innovative have had mixed results by people that are used to things being a certain way.
Mhm.
Consumers, I think it's an open field. I mean, I think consumers are seeking something very different. And the decision, some wine regions are just really focused on communicating only to the industry.
Yeah.
Others are brands that are really communicating to consumers. And I think that's going to be a big part of how you address that business. Most of what I do is reaching industry people.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
it's
Yeah, I
it's
was
kind
gonna.
of rare. Yeah, it's a rare opportunity that I get to do more consumer facing things, which I think are actually fun.
Yeah. So that was I actually kind of in talking about, the ambassador as a strategic operator, how much do you, I mean, you kind of just said mostly trade, but how much would you say you touch, your role touches trade versus consumers versus media even?
Media, again, I would say very little, mostly because for the majority of like regions, there's somebody else doing the media outreach. So if somebody wants to interview me, then they're usually connected through the PR person. If the
Mhm.
area has a PR, if the region has a PR person here. Armagnac did not. When I worked with them, they didn't. So I was getting all of it. I was doing all the consumer, media, everything for them. So it really, it really depends on, again, it depends on the client. It depends on how mature or how, what kind of backup does that region have here.
Right.
And then for some people I know have worked as ambassadors for regions where it's a full-time job. For me, none of these have been a full-time job. They tend to be more event driven. I'll have some months where, I'll maybe doing a bunch of different seminars, and then maybe I don't do anything for Franciacorta for months, right? So
Right.
it's
Right.
also, it's a little bit of like being able to manage that shifting schedule.
Yeah. But it sounds like, though, kind of, the key takeaway from that is for a brand that is not based here to be successful here, it's really important for them to have in-market partners that they work with. And I'm sure that that can sound daunting for a small winery, but it's not necessarily cost prohibitive, right? Like an ambassador can be hired on a contract basis. I guess this is more of a question. I shouldn't just say this. I mean, right? They can be hired on a contract basis or, per event or something like that. But to give yourself a partner that can help you really it's like having a translator. If you're going to come here and you don't feel very comfortable with the language, you probably want somebody that can translate things for you. And this is like a market translator.
I would say I remember I was working with a brand years ago, and I remember going to talking to the suppliers, like, what can I do? What can I do? He said, you know what? It's not sexy, but just walking around and knocking on doors does actually make a difference. To your point, I think it is a hugely important factor. And I think if I were to give one suggestion to a lot of brands that are trying to get more traction in the US market, it is really worth your while to hire somebody whose main focus is your brand, because the more the market is changing here today, consolidation is crazy. And unless you're a really, really big brand and you're really making big numbers, you do get lost in the shuffle. And unless you have somebody who is actively looking out for you, you will hurt. Your brand will hurt. And I can say this direct experience because one of the brands, their distributor has gone through several consolidation rounds. And I had a key account. I was trying to place an order, and they always copy me, thank God. But like that order was going nowhere. Nobody was answering, and I'm like, and if I wasn't here to address that right away,
Right.
that probably would have lost a spot on the shelf, right? It was a by the glass placement at an important restaurant for us, and nobody was answering that. So those are the kind of things that, like just being here, or if you have a portfolio tasting, it's the difference between having somebody who doesn't know the brand at all behind the table or somebody who knows the brand and cares, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are many, many reasons why I think having, and to your point, it doesn't have to be a retainer. It can be a small retainer. It can be an on project. It can be a commission based. I mean, there are many different ways, and a lot of people can do it in a part time capacity. But I really think for where it is, an opportunity for brands to have someone, I think it's very valuable
Yeah.
to have
That's
someone who can represent them.
that's so great. And may I ask, do you ever find yourself for any of your brands supporting wholesalers in any way? Like, do you work with the distributors to help the winery or the region gain more prominence even in their portfolio? Or,
Yeah. So, I mean, with this, for a variety of clients, I've done things where you just go and you do a distributor. And I think, again, it's one of the not so sexy, but really, really important parts of the business. If the salesperson doesn't know what they're selling, they're not going to sell it. I keep saying this to brands. I mean, at the end of the day, salespeople live on commission, and they're putting those bottles in their bag and they're going on the street. They want to make placements because they want to make money. So
yeah,
if they don't understand your brand and they have no idea what to say about it, they're going to be a lot less inclined to actually want to sell it. So my first step is find partners. Your distributors have to be your partners, and they have to really care, and you have to train them, you have to invest in them, and you have to come and spend time in the market with them and go knock on doors and give them the support they need so they can be successful. You can be successful. So yes, that is something I have done a lot of as well. And I did a program with the Wines of Chablis where all I did was, I think I did 6 different training sessions. They were all for suppliers.
hmm
So they're category education, but they were
Yeah.
intended only for suppliers. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's very valuable.
this is really what you're saying then, as an ambassador can be this very dynamic role that is bridging, not just, bringing education to consumer, bringing what the consumer wants back to the supplier, but also just kind of this holistic, like, supplier, distributor, consumer touch point.
Yeah.
You've got your, fingers in all of those different areas in a way that brings so much value to the brands that you're working with.
Yeah. And anchoring it all
Yeah.
in the background is, being educated
Right.
and being supportive of your various clients, right? So, I mean, when I'm going to distributors, I'm teaching them. If I'm doing things for consumers, I'm trying to teach them and get them excited, get them to care. I mean, at the end
Yes.
of the day, just like everything has a story to tell. You just have to get that story to the right people and get them
Yeah.
to care.
Yeah. Well, May, this has been so fantastic. This is such, I think, really kind of just juicy, practical advice for somebody looking to further develop their brand in the US, and some good tidbits for how they can do that. But as we start to wind down, we like to ask our guests 3 questions to help our listeners better understand the US wine market and specifically this episode. So it's just kind of rapid fire style. If you can answer in just a couple sentences. First, what's your number one insight for mastering the US wine market?
Number one insight for mastering. Ooh, Lord. Rapid fire? I don't know. Go to a retail store and spend a couple hours on the floor.
I think that is great practical advice. Like, yeah.
That's what somebody told me to do when I was starting, and I worked in retail, and I think it's the best learning environment.
Amazing. Great advice. What is something you would have told your younger professional self about selling wine in the US?
Just enjoy it. I mean, just explore. Just explore and enjoy it. I don't know.
No, great advice. I mean, it's such a big, fascinating, beautiful world, right? Don't forget to have fun.
Exactly.
And our last question, we all move around a lot in this industry. The last time I saw you was in Montalcino, for example. So what is your favorite travel hack when you're doing market work?
Favorite travel hack? Oh my God, those are good questions. I should have asked it. My favorite travel hack, does it have to be wine specific?
No, not at all. Just, some people say like only pack a carry-on or bring herbal tea, like something really practical for being on the road.
Always bring a carry-on and bring your own steamer because I'm always going to do seminars and I always have my dress that needs to be steamed. So I pack my entire outfit down to the jewelry and the shoes. Everything gets back together in a thing with the steamer. And that's, I'm always holding on to that. It's the first thing. I make sure everything is set up before I do anything. So that's, I'm usually traveling for work. So I try to look, presentable.
So yes, you are great at that. Yes, that is great advice. You know what? I don't think anyone's given that advice yet, too. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, I have a small, great one that just stays in my bag. Actually, my bag is right next to me because I'm packing to travel again tomorrow. But yes.
Well, May, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your expertise. How can our listeners connect with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's In the Grape is my company. My website is In the Grape. My Instagram is is In the Grape. My email is may@inthegrape. They can find me through any of those. They can DM me. They can email me. They can WhatsApp me. Any of the platforms. I am not on TikTok. So don't
Oh, May, thank you so much again for joining us on Masterclass US Wine Market. I hope we get to see each other again very soon.
Me too. I hope so.
All right. Until then, ciao.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Masterclass US Wine Market. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, remember to like, follow, and share our podcast. And if you find value in our conversations, please leave us a review to help others discover the show and grow our community. Stay tuned for new episodes every Monday. Until then, brindiamo il vostro successo.